This is Open Mind Alexander Technique. I'm Jess. Today we're looking at counterbalancing in order to bend to pick something up, particularly when you're bending low or when there's something in the way. So this idea of counterbalancing is a really useful one. I talk about it in all sorts of different contexts. We could talk about counterbalancing by sending the hip joints and pelvis backwards and the knees forward to create counterbalance that really keeps my weight very stable over the center of my feet during a bend. But there aren't always situations and circumstances where you're able to fully do that, or where it even would make sense to do that. So there is no one single correct bend. But we've got some options that tend to work better than others. We're going to look at one particular one today. This is often called a golf lift. Golf like the sport lift. I don't really know the complete origin of that phrase. I've just heard various people, including physical therapists, call it that. But it would make sense for people whose hobby or job involves needing to reach down to the ground a whole lot. This makes sense to me. So a golf lift, or what we're going to call counterbalancing, a bend with counterbalancing, going back and going forward, is how we're able to get a lot of really good balance stability while standing on one leg, or at least while having the vast majority of my weight on one leg. Now, depending on how far down I need to go, for example, if I need to pick something up, or in this case, I'll just put it down, all the way down to the floor, I have some options on how to do this. I could keep my feet parallel to each other and just use hip joints, knees, and ankles to bend, and that will get this down to the floor. Another option I could use would be to go into a sort of a lunge type position. Various different lunges you could do with that, looking at the angle of my back leg here, of how I want to interact with this. Another option that you can do, and this can be particularly helpful for folks who have knee issues, is not to put a huge bend in the knee, the standing knee that's taking most of the weight. If I can counterbalance by sending my, at the moment it's my left leg, back, then as my head and my upper torso goes forward compared to the center of my weight and my balance here, then I really stay quite stable this whole way. This is pretty comfortable, and it doesn't require a huge bend in my standing knee. So there's the difference in how much this weight-bearing knee needs to be able to bend. And we can also use this in smaller bends. For example, get a good frame here. How do I reach over something? Stuff is in the way. I can't just go straight through the back of the chair here. I can go over. So how did I do this? With a very gentle counterbalance. I've taken my left leg back. Most of my weight, pretty much all of my weight, is on my right leg, but I'm still asking the knee to be soft. By a soft knee, I don't necessarily mean that it has to be particularly bent. It's just not locked in place. I can have my knees bent and really grip them and lock them, or I can have them only engaged as much as they really need to be. This is bare minimum. This is deliberate weaponized laziness for a good reason. How do we drive the mech with the least amount of fuel? So as I'm counterbalancing here in order to pick up my fun little tensegrity toy here, I'm doing a couple things. I'm forming a secondary point of contact using my hand. I'm probably realistically going to do that even if I don't need this for balance, because in my case, my balance is good enough that I can do this just fine without any secondary points of contact. But it's just kind of awkward, and I'm almost always going to put my hand on the thing that I'm in front of, unless I have a specific reason not to, right? If this is wet paint, no, don't do that. But it's just an easy way to have something to do with my inactive arm to just rest it very gently. So I'm not doing this in order to hold up my torso. That's a good way to get wrist and shoulder issues if I do this repetitively. I'm already feeling it in my wrist just from that because I do have wrist issues. So this is something I would particularly avoid doing, resting a lot of weight at this sharp bend in my wrists. So I'm not pushing down into the chair in order to support my torso. I'm trusting the support of my skeleton and my spine to support my torso. In order to lean over, and again, I'm not putting really any weight of my torso onto my arm. This is only just the weight of the arm itself resting on the back of the chair in order to reach over and grab the thing. We can use this even in smaller ways. If I am walking quickly and I just need to put something down, and I don't want to square to it and then move, I might do something like this and then keep walking. So interrupting my step, my stride along the way inadvertently creates counterbalancing. So here's what that might look like if I'm doing this quickly, setting it down a little bit lower. So if I walk towards the point I need to set this down, that was it. It's very easy. So I come towards this, and I can just pause right here to check in with how am I doing it. So I can approach. This is still counterbalancing right now. Most of my weight is on my right leg. This is my weight-bearing standing leg at the moment. And I needed to be able to drop my arm lower so that I'm not just physically dropping the tensegrity toy to the chair. I am bending so that I can place it gently, and then I can continue. So this difference here is a very small lunge counterbalancing type movement. And once you practice this and really get this down smoothly, it's very quick. That was it. So what I would encourage you all to play around with is examining where can you use counterbalancing. We can use counterbalancing while both feet are fully weight-bearing, we're split weight, and we can also use counterbalancing in order to put something down. In order to take an object like this all the way to the floor without having to put a really big bend into the standing knee. So I encourage you to get curious about this and see what happens when you apply counterbalancing into your daily movements.